Hello everybody, my name is Neil Tully. It is my great honour to be the mace bearer for the London Borough of Bromley. I'm also the mayoral attendant, which means I look after the worshipful mayor of the London Borough of Bromley, who at the moment is Councillor Hannah Gray. I'd like to introduce you to the Bromley Mace, or to give it its official title is the Beckenham Mace. It was originally made and presented to the urban town district of Beckenham in 1935, and it was presented by Sir Josiah Stamp, who was the first Beckenham town mayor and went on to become the first Baron of Shortlands. Now, the London Government Act of 1963 meant that the 5 urban district councils of Bromley, Beckenham, Orpington, Chislehurst and Sidcup and Penge, Chislehurst and Sidcup being one urban district, came together to become the new London Borough of Bromley. And on the 1st of April 1965, the Beckenham Mace was adopted as the Bromley Mace. Now, a little bit of history about maces, for those who don't know anything about them. A mace is actually a weapon, a medieval weapon, and it would have originally been a wooden stick with a lump of iron on the top, which had spikes or lumps of some kind, and was literally just a club. And it was carried by the bodyguard of the dignitary who owned the mace, whether that been a lord of the manor, or maybe a sheriff or a mayor, or indeed royalty. And as you know, if you see the television, you'll see there is a mace at Speaker's Box in the House of Lords and the House of Commons. And these are exactly the same, the Queen having her own maces, of course. This particular mace is silver, solid silver, and it has gilt coating, which is why it looks like it's gold. But nevertheless, it is just as valuable as the gold, had it been gold. Now, as you see from the top, it has the crown at the top because the mace represents Her Majesty the Queen, and it's a St Edward's crown, which is the crown that the Queen was coronated with, and it has the royal coat of arms where the velvet cushion of the crown would normally be. Around the base of the crown we have the inscription, which basically describes the Josiah Stamp who presented the mace to the town of Beckenham, and on the front we have the Bromley crest, which is an enamel badge on the front there, and for those of you with very keen eyes will see there is a little dent down the side there. Now, the history of that dent is pretty unclear. It happened before I became the mayoral attendant, but when I do have young groups of children visiting the civic centre, and they all get very interested in the mace, when I say it's a weapon, I say that dent was put there by putting it over somebody's head. Of course, absolute pack of lies, but I do tell them that that's not true. In reality, it probably was just either dropped or maybe even shutting the safe door. We've got a big heavy safe downstairs, which caused the dent. No one will remove that dent, because if you go to the jewellers who make these things, they will not remove dents and chips, because it is all part of the history of the mace. They're very historical objects. Down the shaft, as you can see, it's a gold shaft, but inside there, as with every single mace out there, is a wooden shaft. It still contains a wooden shaft inside. You can't see them, but it represents the fact that it was, in fact, a weapon. Now, the mace, if you've been to a civic service, or maybe the Remembrance Day parade, where the mayor's been attendance, and I've turned up with the mace, and it's carried over the right shoulder, and I process into the venue in front of the mayor. Now, just a few paces in front. Now, technically speaking, nobody is allowed to walk between the mace and the mayor, who's then walking behind me. In olden days, when this was a wooden club, you probably would have got the club swung at you. In reality, these days, you'll probably just get a few words of advice: please don't walk in front of the mayor. And that's how it goes at the moment. Most maces are actually carried upside down, would you believe? As I said before, in the original days when these were just a club, the owner would have had his own badge of office or coat of arms stuck to the bottom of the mace. Well, as time went on and these became more decorative and more ornate, and each baron or king or queen decided they wanted to show off a little bit more than the predecessor, then they made their crown that little bit bigger and so on, and it got bigger and bigger and bigger until it was actually bigger than the lump at the top. So what they decided to do was to switch it over and carry it in its inverted position. So this is technically the bottom of the mace, and this is the top. Should Her Majesty visit the Borough, as she did in 2012 for her Jubilee, then the mace is still carried. However, because it no longer says that it's no longer representing her presence, she's actually physically here, then it gets carried in that inverted position, or technically the right way up, over the shoulder like so. In the sad event of the death of a monarch, then what would happen to the mace? It would be covered in a black shroud over the crown, and that would remain in place until the incoming monarch has his or her coronation, and only then would it then be removed. Now, maces, as you know, as you see, I'm wearing white gloves. It's not just for ceremonial occasions. It is a very practical reason as well, because the oils in your skin and your fingerprints are very corrosive. So you're leaving fingerprints on the shaft, and eventually all that gilt will just wear away very, very quickly, in fact. So we have to, if anyone handles a mace, has to wear white cotton gloves or some kind of protective gloves. Now, in the beginning, I talked about the person who presented this to the borough was Sir Josiah Stamp. He was the first mayor of Beckenham. His real name was Josiah Charles Stamp, and he was born in 1880 on the 21st of June. He had 4 sons, Wilfred, Trevor, Maxwell and Colin, and he was an industrialist, and he was an economist, and he was the director of the Bank of England, so a very, very high-rising, fast-rising, very important man. He became the chairman of the London Midlands Scottish Railway, LMS, which was one of the biggest companies in the world. Now, for his achievements and by recognition of his achievements, in 1935 he became the mayor of Bromley, and he rose to the peerage on the 28th of June 1938 to become the first Baron Stamp of Shortlands. Now, his story has quite a sad ending, because on the 16th of April 1941, he was sheltering with his wife Olive and his eldest son Wilfred in the air raid shelter of his back garden in Shortlands, Beckenham, when the air raid shelter sadly had a direct hit from a German bomb, and all 3 were killed instantaneously. Now, as regard to the peerage, the interesting thing is that in this country we have what's called legal fiction, which says that when, say, 1 or 2 people, so 2 or more people die together, it is deemed that the eldest person dies first, albeit for a very minute nanosecond. So the peerage was deemed to have passed from the first Baron Stamp, Josiah Stamp, to his son Wilfred Stamp, who became the second Baron Stamp, albeit for a nanosecond, and most likely the shortest peerage in history. Before the peerage was then passed on to his 3rd son, Trevor, who had the good fortune of not being in that air raid shelter that unfortunate night. So the sting in the tail of that story was the fact, because it was successfully passed from one through his first son Wilfred to the second son Trevor, the family were charged 2 lots of death duty, which is very, very unfortunate, very, very sad. Now, I'm going to just put this down for a second very, very carefully, and it rests on a stand, and the head always faces towards the left as you're looking at it, because that is the side of the chamber that the party in power would sit. Unless, of course, you're in a church, in which case it would face the altar, because God is the highest power of all. Now, I'm just going to draw your attention to this picture behind me, because in this photograph, you can see there is Lord Baron Josiah Stamp in all his mayoral regalia, with the mayoral chain of Beckenham at the time, not the current chain that the mayor wears. This is his wife, Olive, who is the mayoress, and just to the right of him here, you see a splendid fellow in this get-up, who was one of my predecessors, and he's actually carrying this very same mace. Hope you enjoyed that, hope you found that interesting, and I look forward to maybe posting another video on the Mayor's website page in the very near future. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.